welcome, Project 24. Living the best possible human experience we can have, which all begins with learning how to inner engineer what we're given. We're all running on 4 bodies, 4 cylinders, 4 tanks. When you look at that, you think spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. How do we keep those level? Not over, not under, level, to really have the best experience. And I'll tell you, through my life experience, I have learned many lessons, is why I started Project 24. It's a nonprofit organization that I started back in January of this year, and just a project to share information on lessons learned, have this human experience more enlightened, more fulfilled. And I'll tell you, the one thing I've learned was attachment, like how many times I've attached myself to things external of me. So it was learning the art of detachment. And believe it or not, it's like a law, the law of detachment. And it states, in detachment lies the wisdom of uncertainty. In the wisdom of uncertainty lies the freedom from our past, from the known, which is the prison of past conditioning. So I'll tell you, practicing a lot of detachment from things, relationships, careers, material items, cars, houses, money. I'm not saying don't care about that. I'm not saying lose your relationships. I'm saying don't make those things who you are, because detachment has really, learning it, practicing it, putting it into action has really reinvented my relationships with all aspects, friendships, career, to the next level. I know it sounds crazy. And when I say that when you detach, it transcends love, man, I'll tell you, I tell people this and they look at me very confused. You get a lot of confused reactions. How can we love someone yet be detached from them? But hear me out for a minute. I can't put enough stress on the importance of taking this detachment, or trying to take it as a step in your relationships or career, living your life experience, current or past. However, we must really understand what detachment means, because I've come to notice, detach, man, it terrifies a lot of people. It really scares them. And people don't like to be scared, and people don't like to be in discomfort. And I always tell people, it's like, discomfort is our friend. So instead of saying detachment, I think there's a lot of us that walk around and we like to use a term. And there's a lot of folks that put this out there, say healthy attachment styles. From my own experience, and maybe you can relate to your experiences, I can tell you there is no such thing. There is no healthy attachment, but there's certainly something called a healthy detachment. Any attachment to anything external to you is not healthy in any way, whether it's a person, a drug, an idea, a place, a thing. It only makes us dependent on that external thing. Attachment is also like a form of addiction, right? It's the most dangerous form of addiction in life. That includes people. People that are addicted to someone is like a double-edged sword that hurts you and your counterpart that's involved. It leads to anxiety, depression, agitation, anger, frustration, especially when your source of addiction is not available. If that person's not around, if that person's on a trip, if that person passes on. I'm going to try to explain in my terms what detachment is, in hopes that there's no false notions what we hear about this. Detachment doesn't mean, becoming closed off. Not at all. It has nothing to do with selfishness. It doesn't mean to stop being vulnerable or passionate. Carry that forward. It doesn't mean to cut off any kind of intimacy with our partner, or to move mountains for the person, or to not move mountains for the person we're with or in a relationship with. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean we become less of who we are. And it certainly in the hell doesn't mean we jeopardize our relationships with that other person. We have to change the way detachment was taught to us, conditioned to us. We think detachment is a wall that we build that we sit behind. But if you take that wall down and you use detachment as a bridge that leads to more deeper, intimate love, caring, and relationships, you know, we usually work on emotionally detaching from someone after a breakup. Everyone's like, I can't be attached to that anymore. You have to practice these things while you're in the relationship, marriage, or whatever it may be. Emotional detachment is essential in all our present relationships. And I'm not just talking romantic again. Any family member, any friends, any career relationships. When we detach from someone, almost everything stays the same. You still love them, you still care about them, but there's no more dependency and expectations. Those are off the table, which will heighten the relationship. It means to shift our focus from the other person to ourselves. It's a space that we create that allows us to be at peace with who the other person is and with what they do. Detaching is beneficial for both people because it allows us to become more aware and less needy. We start observing the relationship more objectively and can make more wise choices when we have to. We become more us and less like our partner. I'll tell you, you worry a lot less about it. You experience a different level of love because the love is within your being rather than on the level of the mind. When you look at your mind, and I always say this, we're not our minds. The mind is always associated with jealousy, anger, greed, blame, judging. If we experience those feelings in our relationships, then our love is based on attachment. If you get jealous, if you blame, if you point the finger, you get angry, you're attached to that relationship. You most likely maintain an image of your partner in your mind and want them to fulfill it. Hence, that's where expectations are born. Whenever they don't match what's in your mind, our mind has this, vision of that situation that is not healthy. But if you detach, our love becomes authentic and unconditional. We take the person for who they are. Now, how do you detach and still be in love? And I hear that. I had conversations about it over the last couple of weeks. And how do you still be vulnerable? We need to find ways to make ourselves happy being alone. You can't be vulnerable with somebody else unless you're vulnerable with yourself. And I'm telling you, you can't share what you don't do for yourself. Forget the activities, forget about sharing time, Netflix and chill and date nights. We need to cultivate and be in touch with our own emotions, our own feelings, and be in alignment with that. I always remind myself that people and circumstances will always change. And I don't mean breakups. I mean, circumstances and situations will always change. And so will people. They're going to grow. They're not going to stay the same. I can't turn people into my main source of joy. Because even if they decided to walk or they decided to study something different, become a new personality, I'm the only one who suffers those consequences if I'm attached to that current. We must also understand that we cannot control others. So I always said this in other videos, surrender the control. Trying to change people we love or quote, fix them is never going to happen. We can help when they ask for help, or we can stand by them when they go through difficult times. But we have to give up the thought of molding them into what we think they should be. They have their own life experience. People make their own decisions and choices. I think what a lot of us do, and I had a conversation about this the other day, is where we see a potential in somebody. So we try to convince them, try to sell them something that we see, but they got to see that potential in themselves as well as you have to see that potential in yourself. And sometimes you have to take a step back. And if you're having trouble detaching and putting energy into yourself to flourish the relationship, you have to look and see, What is it that you keep getting attached to? Are they filling a void within us that we need to work on? Do we need their love because we haven't yet truly loved ourselves? We need to fill our empty cup with our own bottle. I can't use someone else's. Another point is to know that we shouldn't hurt anyone we love. And if we truly love someone, we don't suffocate them. We don't push them in a corner. We have to give them space to be themselves and love them just as they are, not what we envision them to be. We never seek completeness. We can only share it. And this is the true essence of love. Jerry Maguire jacked it up for everybody when it's like, you complete me. We complete ourselves, and that's what we share. And I'll tell you, when I started placing this into action, vision to me became more clear. And it's almost like I thought I wanted to be loved. First and foremost, that was it. I want somebody to love me. I just want somebody to care. And I'll tell you, to be loved is what so many of us desire. And it's worth something that people long for. But I'll tell you, my experience is walking this journey, it's no longer my top priority. Because I think sometimes what we do, and this was a big awakening for me, and this is true story here. I assumed that anyone who ever loved me also understood me. I assumed that whoever looked in my eyes and, baby, I love you and you're my one, they were looking straight into my own soul. But I'll tell you, what I come to realize is that being loved is not in alignment with being understood. We might feel so much love for someone, yet not even get them, not understand why they say the things they do, not understand or get why they act the way they do. They can mean the world to us, but it might be challenging to relate to their core beliefs and ideas. Love takes work, but true understanding takes more work. To understand another person, you have to be aligned intellectual with emotional intelligence. It's choice that requires giving a part of ourselves to another and putting ourselves in their shoes. And we always tend to confuse love with understanding because I'm telling you, love usually kicks in first. I love them. When that declines, our emotions calm down and we begin to learn about them in a more conscious way. This is where the journey of understanding begins with our partner. That's why you see some at the beginning that will go a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then once it's not the honeymoon phase, it's once that emotion subsides. Now it's the understanding that takes place, which takes more work. And some people bail. Some people call because they're not looking to be understood. They think love solves all. And I'm not going to argue that because I know I got some comments before about that. Understanding someone is what solves all, And I'll tell you, before ever being loved again, man, I just want to be understood. We all been loved countless times. How many times can you sit there? And I'll tell you, I said this to myself. I've been loved by so many relationships, right? And they've been loved by me. But how many can raise their hand and say, man, they really understood me? I don't think many. And I want my mind to be explored before my body. I want my ideas to be held before my hands. Hold my ideas. Don't worry about holding my hand. Before turning myself into a home for someone, I want that someone to grab the lens through which I see this human experience and try looking through it. And through our lens, it might be different. It's valuable to respect them the way they are. I want my person to know that if I'm not a static being, I'm a changeable as the trees during seasons. People change. You're like a river, man. You're not a pond. I said this the other day on a call. We're a river that flows, constantly moving, constantly growing, staying in motion, not a pond, because you look at a pond and what's a pond? Fungus, algae. It's still murky waters, right? My concerns, doubts, fears, I want them to be understood. I want my ideas about where I'm going, what I'm building. You know, our existence, no matter how shallow it may seem at times, I want it to be understood. You know, we should all want someone to put aside an agenda and take the time to listen without imposing ideas and theories. Want someone to listen to me without trying to change me. You know, I'm not looking for any solution or an answer to any questions, and I'm definitely not looking for approval or validation. So we need to be understood first, because generally understanding someone without trying to change them is the beginning in my world of true love. Listen, just think about this for a minute. The more someone works to understand us, the more I believe they're loving us. Because at the end of the day, love is putting ourselves in someone else's shoes and walking their path with them. Very true, vulnerable, authentic partnerships is knowing that we see through different lens and accepting those differences. You know, an intimate relationship is one where we don't judge how the other sees the world and we don't try to impose our visions on them. Love always starts with understanding. And although it's impossible to fully comprehend another being, the willingness to even begin that journey is fucking worth it. Genuine, pure, authentic love is not about only loving the parts we like in another person. It's about loving them whole, whether we agree or disagree. It's about putting aside our ego when it wants to kick in and prove itself right. Because I'm telling you, the ego gets in the way of understanding, and I just want to be understood and loved without its presence around. Everybody, keep being you. Open up, speak to those feelings, speak to those emotions, be vulnerable, and more importantly, always keep being true to yourself.